If the PMO doesn't demonstrate the value, they're perceived as being overhead. And one executive may see all kinds of value because they're benefiting from your efforts. The CFO usually it doesn't, and they have to be educated. And there's one way to educate them is you show them the ROI. If you can't do that, you're not going to change their mind. I once worked for a guy, well, the organization, their culture was to make every decision 4 times.
Mm.
And I actually looked at my boss in a meeting and said, friend, I know you're going to make 4 decisions. My job is to get you to the 4th as fast as possible so I can get back on track.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Stan Bryant. Stan is a senior level project management professional and principal of Strategic Initiative Solutions. His career is defined by a commitment to operational excellence, specializing in strategic initiative project execution, and fractional PMO, project management office leadership, for organizations that need executive level project management expertise to drive complex transformation. Stan has a master's in technology management and a bachelor's in decision sciences, and his certifications include project management, PMP, and Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Stan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Keith.
Awesome. So, it sounds like you've been involved in this transformation, business improvement discipline for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about where you got your start.
Sure. Out of college, my second job was project management. The company I was with needed a project manager, and I like to be in charge, so I signed up and they let me do it. That was 1996. And I've been doing this for the last 30 years. Obviously, my career has developed. I've taken on larger, more important assignments as I've gone along. Probably the biggest thing that I did right was continuous improvement in education and development. I was one of the first 25,000 PMPs in the world. I continue to try to improve myself as a professional, as a person.
It's interesting. So you've, with a degree in, did you say decision sciences?
Yeah.
What school in college is that part of?
That was actually a business curriculum with St. Louis University.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was business or technology. Okay. Very cool. So you actually went to school for some of this stuff. I know a lot of people think of like Lean Six Sigma, some of the statistical stuff is kind of intimidating for people. It sounds like that's part of what you actually went to school for, is probably.
I really enjoyed it. I don't know that I could do the simplex method right now if I had to, but I was really good at it back then.
Imagine that, learning stuff in school that you never had to apply to your professional career.
Yeah, it's a first. It's a first.
I think that happens to a lot of us, right? Excellent. So what was the industry that you were in working as project management to start?
My first role was with a Raytheon division. We were with what was then called Raytheon Engineers and Constructors, and we made road pavers, rock crushers, asphalt plants. And I was the project manager for new asphalt plants. So it was a turnkey CapEx project.
Interesting. What does a project like that entail? You know, I mean, projects exist at all different kinds of shapes and sizes. That sounds like a pretty complex project, building a new plant like that.
No, it's what I call management by projects. It's the thing that changes is a specific configuration and the customer name. Otherwise, this is what we do, right? We have a way of doing it. And the thing I liked about that role is I was interfacing a lot with engineering and the customer. And I just like the cross-functional nature of being a project manager. And I found that the skills I learned there transferred several times to several different industries.
What are some of the twists and turns that your career has taken?
Well, I tend to go big company, small company, back to big company. In this case, I got an opportunity to work for a Siemens division that was, at the time, it was a Rockwell Collins business that had decided they were going to sell. And so I rolled the dice and thought, well, I want to get into that sector. It's a technology application. And 6 months later, they were sold, and I worked for Siemens for the next 5 years. That was in the mass transit space. And, I put a system in for the RTA in Cleveland. It was a massive technology integration, GPS, radio. I went to work for a small company. We're in the telco space, wireless. We did a lot of site decommissionings where we don't go in and take the cables off the tower and take the shoulder away. And then I went to, believe it or not, the driver's license space and started a PMO for a multinational. Best project there was we actually took a warehouse and turned it into a factory. And then we moved 3 factories into that factory. It was really it was a massive effort, great team effort. 2 days of the same. And that was a real change management component, obviously. A lot of people were impacted, so I had to manage the human dynamic as well as the physical project.
Yeah, the management of projects, an individual project, and being a project leader is certainly one can have a lot of complexity to it in itself. There's a lot we can talk about there also. But you mentioned leading a PMO, project management office. Tell us how one goes from being a project manager to leading a PMO, and what that looks like, or examples from your experience.
It was a ambition thing on my part. I wanted to do that one day, and I went to work for a guy that I'd previously worked for that needed a PMO, and I happened to be available, so we connected and we started from scratch. Had to build the artifacts, had to hire the staff, had to educate the organization on what project management office was about, what they did. It was quite a lift.
Yeah, that sounds like it. What do you think it is about the project management discipline that has kept your interest through, 30 plus years of dedicating your career to it?
My skills are very transferable, so I've been in several different industries as I've indicated. That keeps it fresh. The kind of project management I'm doing now is the projects themselves are different. They're not management by projects, they're initiative projects. And that requires a great deal of planning, execution, management of expectations. I really like the cross-functional nature of it. I get to interact with everybody. And further I've gone in my career, I have increasing levels of responsibility and I really like that responsibility aspect. Really, something I get up for. It keeps me going.
Something that keeps you, I guess, trying something new and challenging yourself in certain ways, perhaps?
Yes.
Definitely. What about, projects can involve a lot of people. Can you tell us a little bit about an example of a project that was maybe large in scope or large in budget or large in team or something? Give us kind of some context of what one of those larger projects looks like as a project manager.
The Cleveland project a little bit. We were obviously came out of Rockwell, which is a high tech aerospace company purchased by Siemens, who is very engineering centric. The division that we reported to built rail cars. And so they were tapped into the transit market here in the United States in a big way. The project itself was the largest in the industry at the time. And, I was the proposal manager and had a great deal of familiarity. So they wanted me to be the project manager as well. And we specialized in private radio systems. So we put in a 900 megahertz system, wrapped this, ring the city with microwave network to get all the data from one area to the other. We did use some back then. We had T1s as well. And besides the private radio, we were putting GPS on the vehicles. I'm sure you've seen the application where you're at a bus stop and it'll say the bus will be here in 5 minutes. That's GPS enabled.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was always curious how that actually works. So those things that tell you when the bus will be there, that's all GPS connected, huh?
And our proprietary application was a dispatch application, and you could watch the buses go around on the screen, know where they were at, know if there was a problem, if they're running ahead or behind schedule. Also had security elements that if there was an event on the bus, the driver could hit a concealed button and transit police would know where they're at and go help them.
Interesting. If there's a problem on the bus or something.
Yeah. And what I liked about that is, I'm working with some really high powered engineers, people that really knew their craft and were really good at some really hard stuff.
So one thing that I'm picking up on a little bit of some of your experience, the The idea of project versus process is one that, we kind of deal with in our world here inside KPI Fire and whatnot, and projects being like these big, typically kind of one-off efforts, like, building something you can think of as a project. And then you have process, like stuff that's done repeatedly. It sounds to me like you had some projects where you were like, I don't know, like setting up GPS on buses. How many buses are in that system where you're kind of like doing a project that has a certain amount of like process elements in it?
Right. There's hundreds of buses. Yeah, we had to set up the installation schedule and work with the agency to make sure they could operate and just still have the buses we need. I have done a fair amount of process debt work. I've been in operational roles. My last job was VP of operations. And one my probably my best process story is I was working for this telecommunications company, and we were doing 15 shelters a month, and we were making waterfall project plans for one person per project, and we were going at a snail's pace. And so I took away all the project plans and I put up 3 whiteboards, and I made this person in charge of this job and right on down the line. And we were able to go from 15 to 60 in a 3-month period just by getting the effort focused on productive things. Making a project plan is not terribly productive. Sometimes it's, but if you can go agile and you have a scrum every day and everybody knows what their role is for the day and they see what the role is for the coming days, all that effort goes into productive activity. And so I've in my career, I've done a few things on those lines. I try to figure out what doesn't work and fix it. And there's bad processes all in place. I've run out.
Yeah, your experience spans 3 decades, and the flavor of the day, has changed a few times in that amount of time. Can you reflect for us a little bit on methods or methodologies that have come or gone in your experience, and maybe tell us, do you miss it? Is it good that it went away? Or help us connect like what the best practices currently and how those might have evolved.
Well, back in the day, waterfall mentality where you stack your tasks up and you develop dependencies. That's all we knew. And it was a lot better than what was taking place without that kind of planning. And then Agile came along, and all of a sudden, waterfall became a dirty word. And if you used it, even if it was the right thing to do, you're looked down upon. And now waterfall is not so bad. We're doing what we call hybrid. You choose the right tool for the job. It took us 20 years to get there, but it's it's to me that's the most interesting to have a group of people say that you have to do Agile. It works for everything. There's no other exception. And then to come back around and go, yeah, let's do waterfall once in a while.
I know that there's certain disciplines or maybe even industries where one works better than others. Like, for example, like in the software world, building software agile is like,
Mhm.
the thing, because you can just make changes so quickly. One thing that's popular in the conversation nowadays is data centers, construction, big projects, and you've got long lead times. And man, if you don't get that waterfall right, doesn't matter if you want to be agile if you don't have the things put together. Do you have any insights on when one method is appropriate versus the other?
I think data center is a good example. There's lots of moving parts. There's lots of risk. It's not a repeatable process in and of itself. You have things that are repeatable, but it's not like software where the process of developing the deliverable is the same. It's just an issue of who's going to do what when, and how do you do that the most efficient way. If you're building something like a data center, you got all the trades, you got all the technology, you got the power company, you got the water source, all that stuff has to be. You have to sweat those details.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about even some conversations I have had internally with some folks about working with an organization. There's this, you've got to build this like mental cognition of how you're going to work together with a team. And you use the word risk, how much risk is involved. Like, it's okay to be agile when there's low risk and, kind of close relationships with a team. You can probably work quickly, but when you've got a high degree of coordination or a large amount of risk, more planning, I guess you might say. Like waterfall to me, this probably isn't like it's definitely like measure twice, measure 3 times, cut once, as opposed to agile is like make a bunch of cuts and, keep
Yeah,
cutting.
you have to fix it and do that tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a fan of both, I guess you might say. Like there's a right tool for the job.
right.
So let's talk a minute about how projects even end up on the radar, how projects get into the hands of a project manager, maybe at the PMO level or like at the strategy level. How have you seen, how do some of these projects get initiative? Maybe take us from the mindset of the executive to, okay, here's a project we need to hire a project manager for. What are some of the steps that need to happen in that in
But
your
when
experience?
projects happen because there's a problem, because somebody no longer wants to put up with the pain that they've got in an area. In some cases, that's a federal mandate. You must be real ID. All right. So
Okay.
guess Real ID project is born, or it's a um, we need we need to turn this warehouse into factory because this having factories all over the place doesn't make sense for us. It's inefficient.
Consolidation, kind of financially driven. Interesting.
So if somebody has pain somewhere, and it's usually a project because it's not routine operations. It can be routine operations, and that's solved through process more often than not, and strategic planning and those kinds of things.
Yeah. In our experience, I use this word business improvement. Usually there's a decision in a large organization that somebody wants to improve the business, you might say, and down comes a decision like, okay, we need to increase revenue by this amount. Do we need to reduce cost by that amount? I mean, gosh, I'm thinking about conversations happening in like the government, not to get into specific sides, but somebody makes a decision about increasing revenue, reducing costs,
Mhm.
and it's fine to set that goal. That's like a nice thing. But then a bunch of people have to go to work to figure out how to pull this off. How do we fill this bucket, this number that somebody wants to hit, and come up with those projects? I know that you have talked about a process. I think you call it the EDGE process or program. Do you want to explain that to us a little bit and how that can be useful in putting a portfolio of projects together?
Sure. First got to know KPI Fire because your system enables the program very nicely. It's 5 steps. First is selection. Your world, they're filling out the ideas, right? You're developing the charters, and then you're saying, yeah, this fits with our strategic direction. This is something where you want to spend time and money on. The ROIs there, those kinds of things. And then develop. Then you're developing the plan, and you're using whatever tools are appropriate. You're identifying your KPIs. What's your ROI? And basically making the business case. And then the next phase is approval. So you go in front of the committee, which usually has highly placed executives on it, and you sell your pitch. Each of these have gates. Again, fits really nicely into your solution. If you get the green light, then you can go into execution. You may have CapEx you have to buy. You may have lines you need to reconfigure. You may have material to negotiate a better price on. Whatever it is, or some combination of those things, you execute. And you're reporting all the way along the line on how you're doing. Your demonstration where you're showing the line graphs. This is how we're measuring ourselves to plan. It's that process. And then the last step is you close out and validation. Did we do what we said we would do? Did we get the results we thought we would get? What lessons do we need to learn? What do we need to leverage? What do we need to not do in the next one? And it's just a repeating cycle. We probably had 30 projects on one stage or another over a course of a year. My job was to integrate all that and to keep the wheels on the bus, if you would, and help people understand that, yes, you do have some deliverables, and this is one they need to be delivered. That was probably the hardest part because everybody else had a day job. They're running the factory, they're running a procurement department, and they've got these initiatives on top of that load, and that had to be managed very closely because everybody's reliant on everybody else.
Yeah, that does sound a lot like the idea funnel process, the validation process. There's a lot of interesting topics there that we can dive into. I want to ask you some questions about your experience in leading a PMO and then also leading projects. Let's say I'm an executive and I want to either set up a PMO or maybe I'm gonna hire somebody to lead my PMO. What are some questions that I might want to ask a future PMO leader to help validate their fit for the job, their mindset, things that might help me make a good decision in that?
It's all right. Role versus specific questions. I want to give you categories of things, if that's all right. PMO lead needs to have a really strategic mindset. They have to understand that the company wants to get from one point to another, and they will more often than not do that through a project. And they have to view themselves not as a organization of no, but how, because sometimes those are hard things. Then I would find out if they have an appreciation for project management governance. Do they understand change control? Do they understand risk identification and mitigation? What kind of portfolio have they had? Where are they at in their career? Have they done hard things? And by the time I got to this role, I'd had a $70 million technology integration portfolio over 2 companies over 10 years. I learned a few things along the way. And so by the time I got there, I've been there, done that. The only difference is I was managing other people that were doing the projects in addition to doing projects. So I would look for those kinds of things, strategic project management capability. Do they understand governance? And then, of course, are they leader?
Let's say you're in a PMO role and now you're thinking about who you want to lead a project. What do you think are some of the characteristics or mindsets that make someone a good project leader?
Well, I was fortunate, the people that I hired were, in this context, were already project managers and they had a track record they could talk about, and I could get a good feel for their abilities and their style and what they understood. It certainly helps if they have a PMP. The PMP sets the knowledge base, gives us all the same language. If I say risk mitigation to a PMP, they know exactly what I'm talking about. They know exactly how to do it because they passed the test.
Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. Let's talk, a lot of times we learn from our failures more than our successes. Both are good teachers, but is there a behavior pattern or failure mode that you've seen either at the project, like maybe at the project leader level where you've had to let people go, or maybe something that you personally learned or something that you saw somebody else learn that listeners could be like, I'm in that pattern. I need to not do that. What are some of the things that could cause a project leader to not get that next opportunity?
Well, when you work for me, I expect discipline. I expect to make an honest attempt to deploy with the methodology that I believe, because of the years of experience, needs to be done, and that can change by project. But if you're not disciplined and you don't try to be disciplined, you don't last very long in my organization. I actually had somebody get upset with me because the planning she was had to do was tedious. Like, well, that's the job. And if you don't like that job, then let's try to find you another role. And we did. But those are the people that don't make the trip. I have a great tolerance for mistakes. I really do, because I've made a bunch myself.
When you say discipline, give us drill down to some behaviors. What are some behaviors that demonstrate that level of discipline? Is it, yeah.
Well, first of all, it's appropriate level of planning. It's how well you manage your stakeholders. Did you go to the trouble of coming up with your stakeholder management plan like I asked you to do? And do you have a corresponding communication plan? It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing, but you need to know that executive that asked for the project, class 1, high influence, high interest. I would be class 1, high influence, high interest. Your project team, usually class 2. They're interested, they're invested, but they're not necessarily going to kill the project. At least not if they're passive aggressive, they may, but at least not with a decision. And then you go down to forward, which are people in the organization that are kind of interested in what's going on. And you have different communication strategies for each of the 4. Well, I insist that my project managers have that. I insist that they think about the risks and, if possible, quantify the risks. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just say it's bigger in a red box. Well, and then a plan. What are you going to do about it if it shows up? What's the probability? Projects are full of risk. Bad stuff happens. You lose resources. Technology doesn't work. Well, you can predict these things. You can decide what you're going to do about them before they get there. So those are examples of project management disciplines that I require from my PMs. And far more often than not, people responded well to the structure. liked it because they could understand it. They could plug into it. I was there to help them if they needed it. And a few didn't make the trip.
And you're touching on some things like communication plan and stakeholder plan and these communications. And I'm sure that the answer is varies based on the size of the project and, specifics. But is there hey, until you have somebody who wants more or less frequency, start with this level of things like status reports on the projects to your stakeholders? Do you have like a preferred cadence for that sort of thing?
Um, as I mentioned, you classify the stakeholders by degree of influence, degree of interest, and that's pretty measurable. You're doing a lot of everybody's, unless it's class 4, which is just mild interest. The first 3 are all going to get some kind of status updates. One is going to get the phone call if something bad happened, or I think it might be happening, because I only surprise vice presidents. It doesn't go well. It's career limiting. So my communications plans always had, VP gets this, project team and people who are going to use the deliverables in class 2, they're involved. They're getting updates. They're part of the meeting where decisions are being made.
If I was a project leader working in your project management office and I came to you and I was kind of having a challenge with one of my executive sponsors, maybe they were overly involved. What advice or guidance might you coach me with?
Yeah, well, that never happens.
That never happens.
As the PMO lead, I would take it upon myself to go have a cup of coffee with the vice president and say, I really appreciate your engagement and your input's valuable, but you're slowing down the process. I once worked for a guy, well, the organization, their culture was to make every decision 4 times. And I actually looked at my boss in a meeting and said, friend, I know you're going to make 4 decisions. My job is to get you to the 4th as fast as possible so I can get back on track.
I
So I
like
would
that.
have that honest conversation with them. And over time, they responded and understood that I had their best interest in mind by asking them to be more decisive.
Yeah, I like what you said there. You like communicating that they had their best interest in mind. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why that dysfunctional behavior happens in communications, but I think what I'm picking up is that that's probably one of those things that comes with the wisdom of ages. Like, I'm guessing that the first couple times that happened, you didn't have quite that same, like, okay, I know how to handle this.
You don't start off there. And a lot of years before I got to that situation, I look back at stuff I did a year ago and go, man, that was stupid.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to learn, always trying to grow. But no, you don't start off there.
What about, I mean, the same, you could have a problem in the other way. Let's say you're working a project in an organization and maybe you feel like there's not enough sponsor engagement or something. How might what have you ever come across that, or what sort of advice might you give somebody who feels like, oh, I wish I had an engaged sponsor. I can't seem to reach him.
That actually is more common than the other, because the sponsors are typically executives and they've got a lot of things on their plate. I'm proactive in the updates. I may say, hey, we've got this risk formulating. This is what the potential impacts are. This is what I'm doing about it. Let me know if you want to talk. So at the very least, I know and they know that they were informed and they had an opportunity to engage. And I've sent many of those emails with no engagement, and sometimes the risks were realized. And when they were, I could say, this is not a surprise. You had your opportunity to tell me how to handle it differently before it happened. Um, but more often than not, they're kind of hands off.
Is there, I mean, I can't think of a particular scenario that comes to mind necessarily, but I know one thing that can be frustrating with projects, especially for a project leader, is you're working on a project and let's say the initiative that project was under all of a sudden changes, like, I don't know, maybe budget's cut, policy changes, new administration, I don't know, something happens. Have you ever been caught in the middle of one of those?
I have. Keep going back to the same example. The gentleman who hired me to be the PMO lead um, had a short shelf life, I'll put it that way. And the organization went from a PMO in every continent model to we don't need PMOs.
Mm.
So me and my team have done all this work, and then all of a sudden they shoved us into the manufacturing organization, and we're doing manufacturing projects instead of enterprise level projects. Thankful that they found a place for us, And the team did a lot of good work, and we really helped that manufacturing operation. But that's quite often that the ground shifts beneath your feet. You just have to be resilient.
Yeah, that is an interesting scenario. As you were explaining that, I was realizing that I know that a lot of companies that have like a Lean Six Sigma office, continuous improvement vice president, even a PMO, there's I guess, a mantra that I like to repeat that is structure is one of the first artifacts of strategy. So like when senior leaders start making strategic decisions, they look at how things are structured, right? Projects centrally managed, or should we have projects managed under departments and functions, or should they be at the site level? And people start moving pieces around on the board. And when you are leading one of those offices, you might get a call from the CFO to say, "Hey, Stan, we're thinking about cutting the PMO office. Could you come and meet with us in 2 weeks and show us what you guys have done and how you've added value?"
Yeah, it was actually tomorrow morning, not 2 weeks.
Yeah, tomorrow morning. Could you come this afternoon and show me what you guys are doing and why we pay you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the PMO doesn't demonstrate the value, they're perceived as being overhead. And one executive may see all kinds of value because they're benefiting from your efforts. The CFO usually doesn't, and they have to be educated. And there's one way to educate them is you show them the ROI. If you can't do that, you're not going to change their mind.
So this is a very juicy conversation, particularly for this podcast, as we talk about ROI, because a lot of the people that we're involved with and are connected to are in this space of, having a hunch that this thing is a good thing. It starts out as maybe what we'd call an idea. And then you have to justify that good idea with some data. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are in the habit of like getting things approved and like getting things done, and then maybe don't like close the project out in a real, whether you say sophisticated or mature way. And then they forget the benefits that they've done, and they either fall back to prior states, or they don't benefit from that decision making. Are there some lessons that you've learned about how to capture ROI and how to close out a project that people could maybe learn from?
The biggest thing is you need to have a formal authorization plan. How are you going to take this deliverable and integrate it into the operation? Most projects fail at that stage. They don't do the change management. They don't do the education. They don't do the envisioning. All right, this is how you're going to use this new shiny object. This is what it's going to do for you. Because it starts off in the executive's idea, it gets translated through the PMO, and when it gets handed down the organization, there's no direct ownership. So you have to create that ownership. You have to show them that this is a good thing. Project managers, PMOs, companies, they're poor at that part of the change management. If you deliver something, if you deliver what they're expecting, you can then, and more often than not, you can measure it. I mean, especially in process. Are we more efficient? Well, there's a number for that. Were we able to grow without adding headcount? Well, you can figure that out too. These are data-driven conversations, and you have to find that data. I mean, this cost reduction program we saved the company $5 million year over year. Okay, um, those are real numbers, and we tracked it, we measured it, reported on it, and it had value. The factory, we're no longer shipping stuff all over the country. We're moving it from one part of the building to the other. You can measure those things, and that's really what you have to do as an organization, as a project manager office. You have to say, we made a difference, and this is how it was measured.
You mentioned a couple of really great ones. Where I'm going with this next question is like, as that PMO scorecard, like you're going in there to meet with that CFO and you want to show them all the great things that you did. Cost savings is an awesome one because you can say, well, this is how much our program cost and this is how much we save. So you use the example of like 5 million in savings. What are some of the other metrics, maybe in addition to cost savings? You touched it a little bit on like factory, and I'm thinking maybe there's like some delivery metrics, but what are some of the other, like, is it the number of projects completed, projects successfully completed? Like, how far down into like the weeds might you get? Like, where do you try to focus your ROI scorecard on your PMO?
Yeah, I do it at the deliverable level, and we could do 15 projects in a year. And if they don't make a difference, that don't move the needle, then we waste our time and money. But if you can say, you asked us for a new product, we deliver a new product, you've got this much revenue. You asked us to make this production line more productive. And you pull together people like yourself and figure out how to do it and you direct them. And all of a sudden your throughput's going up 30%. And those are the things I've done. I've never measured the portfolio except to say, we used to have 3 project managers and we're doing 50% more projects and we need a 4th.
How about advice for, let's say, somebody who's earlier in their career, like maybe where you started, maybe they're just like really just managing their first project. What are some of the things that, from your own history that you kind of look back on? You've shared a few of them already, but how might you put that together in a list?
Well, I'm going to use characteristics instead of statistics, if that's okay.
Sure.
My approach was if there was a big project or hard project, I signed up for it. And I did that both to show value and to learn and grow. And you make a lot of mistakes when you engage in that kind of growth. And that's how you grow. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that again because I don't like how this feels. And so that's the approach I took. And going from even into the VP ranks where I've been recently, same kind of approach. Where's the challenge? Let's step up and let's do it. That's a characteristic that I've taken. And then I'm educating myself all along the way. And I manage my stakeholders as well as you can, because when you're in those environments and you're being stretched, you need partners at the high level.
Well, Stan, this next section I want to go into, this is our rapid fire. These are just some kind of quick
Sure.
questions, top of mind answers. So the most important job of a leader is to
get their people to come up with solutions and help them with the execution of those solutions.
Excellent. Do you have a favorite go-to problem-solving tool from your project management toolbox, one that you turn to frequently?
It really depends on what the problem is. I know that's not a great answer, but you have to have a toolkit. If it's a personnel problem, you have to know how to handle that. If it's just something broke out in the shop floor, you have to know who to go to. So really a situational key thing.
Is there a book that you are either in the middle of now or that you recommend for somebody early in their journey?
Probably not the answer you're going to expect. I recommend highly that people read Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson every year. Uh, it's a thought of know yourself, be true to yourself, do what you're doing, be purposeful. It's just a very, very good message.
I love it. My personal reading list gets appended every time I do one of these podcasts because a lot of times I hear books that I haven't heard of before. That's one of those I appreciate.
My recent reading is dropped off just because I'm launching consultancy and getting certificates, and I've been reading a lot of stuff about AI.
Yeah, my own personal learning plan, I've committed to every evening, after school, you might say, instead of just watching mindless videos on YouTube or TV or something, I'm watching some sort of AI related video on YouTube, kind of like a little AI lesson of some kind.
And
So
if
that's
you're
my own little
if you're
personal improvement
professional and
commitment.
you want to be relevant, you have to know what it is. You have to know how it's used. You have to get the myths out of your brain and get more feet on ground with it. It's a powerful tool, and it's for good, it's for bad, or it's neutral. But you have to understand it.
Yep, so true. Okay, do you have a favorite question, one that you turn to frequently, find yourself using as a leader, as a project leader?
What do you think we should do?
We should do. It's a great one. That's a great leadership question right there. Empower people, get them to come up with the ideas. I like that. Is there a belief that you have that is maybe unpopular or counter to popular opinion?
I don't consider myself a stoic, but I subscribe to their principles, and that's you control the things you can control. Virtue is the biggest thing to worry about. It's just a good philosophy.
Wonderful. Is there a question that you think more leaders should ask themselves?
Would I want to work for me?
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. Look in the mirror.
Yeah, and you got to do it honestly. It's easy to say, yeah, I'm awesome. Reality is we all have room for growth. And if you're getting feedback or people aren't responding, you don't want them to. It's probably you. And you have to ask yourself what works for me.
I like that a lot. I think that I think that's probably an attribute of people with a high locus of control. Like there's oftentimes something more that I can do to improve the situation, even if it's, like I think that's a good mindset. Like what can I do? If you had to summarize the essence of lean in one sentence, what would that be?
I hate to answer that to guys like you because that's your life.
No.
Lean is a tool that can really get rid of the friction.
Well, Stan, for anybody that might want to connect with you, what's the best way for somebody to reach you?
You can reach me at sbryant at SIS slash or dash PM.com.
Sure.
And as a just starting off consultancy, I really encourage them to reach out to me.
Yeah, I fully encourage him to reach out to Stan. I appreciate that. Well, Stan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a fun conversation. I appreciate you sharing the wisdom that you have from project management and leading project office and leading operations. And just really appreciate you sharing your valuable wisdom with us.
No, thanks for having me, Keith. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, if you would like to suggest a guest, ask a question, or give us any ideas for episodes or content, you can reach out to me, Keith Norris, on LinkedIn. And this concludes this episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like or a comment, give us a rating on the podcast. That always helps. And follow us on the socials. You can share the podcast with friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. And you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change.